Hello everyone, we are here celebrating Age of Ascension, and one of the common questions that we've received from Covenant subscribers who have gotten their KeyForge boxes in is, what do I do now? How do I evaluate these decks? What am I supposed to make of this beautiful box of decks that's in front of me? And Zach and I are here, we want to talk a little bit about that because we've gone through it ourselves, and hopefully it will be a help to everyone else out there who is now encountering the same problem and will continue to encounter it as new KeyForge sets release.
Yeah, I was here at Covenant Tulsa over the weekend, and I was opening my displays, and I was seeing other people open theirs. And everyone, a lot of people have one or two boxes that they signed up for, so they get those. And, I open mine, and I'm looking, and in this case, the second set, half the cards are brand new in the set. And so you're looking at the list, but you just have no idea what's going on. And so just seeing a lot of people that were pretty overwhelmed with, obviously there's one way to do this, which is you could just open a deck. You could open a deck and we could play.
Right, which is a nice, that's
and then we could do it again, and we could do it again. But obviously I think the way this works, unlike a lot of other card games where the decks are just pre-made and you don't have a choice of what's in it, people open a display, they get 12 decks, and then it's like they want to find the decks that they're going to want to play the most, whatever they're most excited about. Because half the fun this past weekend for me was taking the decks I'm medium on, and it's just because it's either house combinations or certain cards I'm not as interested in, and be able to trade those with other players. But so many people were hesitant to trade because they just didn't know what they had yet.
Right.
And so it's this weird, I have a lot of work to do, and it reminds me of when a new set of a collectible card game comes out, and you don't even know where to start.
Yeah,
You get all these new cards, and then it's like, what do I do?
You don't want to make that trade and then figure out, oh, that was a $100 card that I traded for two, like commons.
That happens in collectible games all the time.
A lot of pressure there. So what we're here to do really is hopefully relieve some of that pressure. There's a big kind of, dialogue that is centered around deck ratings and finding the number of your deck and how strong it ultimately is, and and being really into that side of things. And if you're into that, then you already know what you're doing. So go do it.
You're probably not watching this video.
You're probably not watching this video,
honestly.
but if you're like Zach and I, who particularly have recently, in our overall lives with games, have recently really come home to roost, I would say, on the idea that this is really all about maximizing the fun that you're having and asking the questions, how can we do that, rather than how can we get the best deck or be the best players, then this is the video for you. Because the long story short of KeyForge for us, and this is why I think it's such a powerful game, is that it's not about finding necessarily the best deck. It's really about finding the decks that you're going to have the most fun with and finding how each individual deck wants to be played. And the true mastery of KeyForge is not necessarily in tracking down that deck that has all these big combos and stuff. It's about being handed a deck and being told, can you play this better than the other person who just tried to play it? And I think that is the thing that we can help look at when we're looking at what a deck is and what you might do when you come into a deck and say, well, given the kinds of cards that it has and the kind of the way that it's built, I think this is how it might want to play. So we're going to be busting open some decks and looking at them.
And I think that's a really useful skill. One of my favorite ways to play KeyForge is sealed, which is where you just walk in. It's what we did this weekend at the store. Walk in, you get a deck, open it, and that's what you're playing in the tournament.
Yeah.
And that, obviously, there are potentially decks that are just strictly better than other decks, and that's fine. But it really tests your skill, because can you, in the moment, look at a deck, read it, having never played it, start playing, and figure out what is this deck trying to do? And that is, like you said, probably the best part of KeyForge, is that it's about discovering what does a specific deck do. But even that, it's saying that's easy enough.
Sure.
But then you actually look at a deck, and if you don't play a ton, you can't just look at a deck and say, oh, this is what this deck's trying to do, so now I know exactly what I'm doing. So that's really what we're here to do.
Well, let's do it then. KeyForge Age of Ascension. You had a lot of thoughts on this box. I'm going to open this and see if I can do it without an opening device.
I reviewed just to see if it was just my memory being biased. Grabbing the pen to open it. Basically, I looked at the first set, and there's some of the same verbiage, but I feel like the just overall graphic design happening on the second set I like a lot more. I don't know why.
It feels more like the Discovery vibe for whatever reason. It's more mysterious than it is in your face.
In this little box, it says 204 new cards in inconceivable. I can't read.
Number of new decks.
Inconceivable number of new decks.
I can't conceive of it.
So there's just a vibe to it. And that's what does the front of this one say? Contains one unique ready-to-play Archon deck. That's good.
Let's take 4 of these.
We're
going to do
take
4 today.
4.
Let's look at them. So we're gonna do, so this is what it looks like if you get a KeyForge subscription through us. Basically, we just take these boxes, however many you want.
This is a display.
Yeah, this is called a display. We call them deck displays on the website. And we just send it to you, and they arrive, like 91% this time around arrived on release day to their destination in the States, and then the rest arrived the day after. So if that's something you're interested in, this is a great option for you, and you don't even have to pay until a couple of weeks before these decks come out.
Yep,
So
and it's important. The
really
release
nice.
date for Fantasy Flight game products is almost always on a Thursday. So within a day of release means that you have it going into the weekend, which is the reason that we freak out about it.
Very relevant.
So you want to open up a deck and we can kind of just break it down?
Let's open up a deck and start talking about it.
this.
So one of the things that I find to be most amazing with KeyForge is certain cards will hit you. And like last set, it didn't happen until halfway through when I had played a bunch of different decks, and I saw a common card that I had not seen. It's so amazing that you can play this game for so long and still have commons that you haven't seen in a set. So I hadn't seen Bat Drones.
There's still cards from the first set I've never seen.
I haven't seen them, right?
I've played a
There's
good amount
decks
of
will
KeyForge.
pop up and I'll be like, because I don't like to study out every deck, like what is every card in this set. I like to discover it, right? I think that's what this game is about. So I saw that Bat Drone for the first time, and I looked at it and I said, this is it. I mean, this is the card. You'll know it when you see it. Games are amazing and quite funny like that. You'll know when it happens that, oh, this is something. It's like the old the Marie Kondo thing. The
Spark Joy?
The Spark Joy. I mean, you kind of know.
Yeah.
You don't need to talk yourself in or
100%.
out of it.
That's what, one of my early cards was the Bear Flute and the Bear.
Yeah.
And it's not aggressive, it's not overly good, it's fine, but it's just a fun little interaction that I like a lot, and I like the art on the ancient bears. Yeah, let me open
The pin. And it's one of those things where it's not really even about saying, oh, I bet this will be good. All right, so here's the first thing that I think we should do. Here's our deck. We've just unboxed the deck. So let's take the deck list and let's not even worry about it. We don't care.
Henderson of Penarm
We don't care about that.
Port.
First thing you do, you read the name. Do you love the name? That's really the first thing you got to do, right? Because sometimes just loving the name is enough to love a deck.
Sure.
Henderson of Penarm Port is a very nice name. It's not something that appeals to me personally. If it had something like
If your
Wave
last name was
Crasher,
Henderson, this would be like the best deck possible.
there's a Zach Henderson out there
Yeah, he's just
waiting
like,
for this.
bam.
Yeah.
And what's the other thing is the Archon design on the back is unique, right?
Sometimes
I like
that
looking
looks
at those.
really good too.
And the color on this particular deck is green, so you should note all that kind of stuff.
So here's what I'm going to do. I like to bust these down into the different houses. And now, I mean, to be fair, here's the first thing. You can look on here and just see if there's any weird symbols. Right?
There are some weird symbols on
Mavericks or
there.
anything.
Special. This
I've got a
symbol?
little weird diamond thing
That's the
that
special
says
symbol?
Shadows Ambassador. So
The
something
ambassadors are a
special
cool
is
thing in
happening
the set.
there. And I've got an average number of rares. I'm looking for the stars there. It's like, okay, sometimes if a faction has like 6 or 7 stars in it, you're like, whoa, this is happening.
And the interesting thing about the rarity in this game is that the rare cards, obviously they show up less than the commons and uncommons, but it's not always the best cards. A lot of times it'll be very specific. A good example of this from the first set is Epic Quest, and it's actually in the second set. But it's a very specific card that can be good, but also like you just don't want to see it all the time. So it's a balance of very cool, unique stuff that's rare, and then also just things that you don't want every deck having a bunch of because they're very particular use cases.
Right on. So the first thing, the houses, right?
Yep.
We've got Shadows, we've got Sanctum, we've got Dis. This is actually a pretty nice spread of houses that I would enjoy playing. I think you as well, right?
100%, yeah.
So some people have houses that they just don't like. Zach hates Mars.
I don't hate Mars. I just dislike them. They feel very unthematic to me.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. They're the only faction that feels like they're from our universe.
You're on the edge of hate, though. I mean, I've talked to you about it many times.
I am on the edge.
If you
of
talked
hate.
about Mars, it's somebody
strong.
in my life
Well,
that you talked about like Mars, I would say, Zach hates that person.
I don't. Whoa. I don't hate Mars. Like if you're playing Mars, I'm offended by you. You know?
Right, I would have not.
I dislike Mars in that I got 2 displays through my subscription, and they were 14 of my 24 decks had Mars in them, and I was just like,
It's a cruel mistress, karma, isn't it?
But that said, I'm starting to feel forced. It's like I'm just gonna try to give them a chance. I haven't really given them a proper chance.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. It's about discovering how you can like Mars, not saying that you wouldn't.
Can I enjoy them is now the challenge, and that's a cup I'm willing to bear.
So the first thing, you look at the houses, and even if you're like, I don't like these houses, just put that out of your head for now. Let's just look at some cards. Let's see, because especially when you get a new set like Age of Ascension, maybe the first set you didn't like Brobnar because it was like very aggressive. But now we've got these giants and they're kind of peaceful sometimes. So maybe now Brobnar has a little bit more. So no preconceived notions. Let's start with this. And the first thing that I like to do is I like to look through this card list and see if there's any cards that are particularly notable.
That's almost the first thing I do is I'll just look through all the cards and I'm looking for something that like makes me just jump with joy or like sticks out to me. That's the first time I saw the Ancient Bear and the Bear Flute. I was going through, I hadn't even seen the Ancient Bear, but I had the Bear Flute. And I was like, the ability to just continuously get out something, assuming there's a bear in the deck, was something that I just very much enjoyed, right? It's like that, they're just going to keep coming, right? The flute's going to keep getting played. But yeah, so did you find anything in your old spread?
Here's the things that I immediately noticed. So we've got a lot of like, creatures and various things. Like, that's all cool. They have basic abilities. Some of them are Seal and Amber. Some of them are discarding your opponent's stuff, and that's really good. But I'm looking at cards that I have multiples of, and I'm looking at cards that would have a tremendous impact on the game, right? And so in Dis, I have 2 of those examples for me. So one of them is a card called Banish. I've got 2 of those. I think this is just a fundamentally good card that's going to help me understand how this deck's going to start to play. Banish gains you an Amber, and you put an enemy creature into your opponent's archives. So it's a spot removal is what that's called. So whenever you can point at one thing and say, I want that thing gone. It's not permanent because they can scoop their archives next turn and potentially replay it, but it's a really easy way to get rid of something, no holds barred, no conditions needed to be met.
And when you get rid of them, any upgrades on them go away.
That's right. So they're gone too, and they give me Amber, so I think this is just a really solid card in the faction. And then we've got a card like Amber Imp. And so this is an elusive creature. It sits there on your board as Dis, and it says after a creature reaps, stun it.
That's a potent effect. Now, that affects you, by the way.
It does affect me. Now, I don't know if this will have any actual impact on the game. Because I'm thinking, okay, so my opponent has that out. I play the things, then they come in unexhausted. The next turn I have to choose that house again. Then they reap. Then I get all that Amber, and then they're stunned and I can't use them again. I don't know if that's too slow or too fast, but I know that this is a potential thing that could wreck an opponent. So I like to mention that.
Well, and I think the fact that it has elusive means that to get rid of it, they have to play a card to get rid of it or attack it twice, because the first attack doesn't hit an elusive creature. But in that situation, right, I've been in plenty of KeyForge games where they have 4 or 5 creatures out from one house. Just playing that means that it went from they can reap for 5 to they can't anymore.
They can, and they just have to deal with getting stunned for the rest of the game,
just have
basically,
to deal
right?
With getting stunned.
Where they lose a turn. So those are the cards that I pull out from Dis, and I'm just going to keep those here. And Zach, why don't you give me a little bit on the Sanctum front? Tell me your like 1 or 2 picks from that card pool.
This Sanctum pool is actually loaded.
And a lot of times,
it's a loaded.
Almost, even if there's not like good cards, I'm looking for things that I think are fun, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm looking for like the epic quests in the game or the Khalifi dragons, like the things where you have to do weird stuff to make it work, because my mind wants to just try to make things work. That's where I like to be.
I'm starting to sense, and this may bleed into the second point of what we're trying to do here, but obviously, I don't know what the other disc cards are, but I know that you have one that makes it where they get stunned if they reap. In Sanctum, as an example, we also have Barrister Joya, and she says enemy creatures cannot reap.
Oh.
So you have another option for just basically slowing down their ability to reap.
So we're starting to see that there's a couple of cards that might, so even looking at Banish and Amber Imp together, this looks like, okay, well maybe I'm starting to slow the game down a little bit. Yep. Maybe I'm playing a longer game and I'm keeping people from reaping.
And on that same note, one of the rares in this deck is Proclamation 346E.
That reminds me so much of Spoils. It's unbelievable.
This whole
like
game
the Mal
does.
cards.
I wish, if you're familiar with Spoils, you'll understand exactly what I'm saying.
The 3 of you out there,
get
ready.
I
this
wish
is for you.
Nah, it's not that big of a thing. I wish that they would lean 10 or 15% more into the theme and humor of this game, because it would be the like most wholesome version of Spoils imaginable.
That is essentially well, they're hitting pretty good right now. I
do think they're doing.
I gotta be there.
So Proclamation 346E says, while your opponent does not control creatures from 3 different houses, so they have to have a creature in play from all 3 of their houses, their keys cost +2.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So now you have the ability to stop them. They stun if they get reaped. They can't reap if she's in play. Now you're making their keys cost more.
So that's impacting the game.
Yeah, and then they have a handful of cards. I just through my first glance, other cards here that either reduce them down to 5 or capture when everything attacks or capture 3 when the guy comes into play.
Okay, solid.
But then that's just good. So now you're starting to sense a theme happening with this deck, which the synergy of a deck in KeyForge is a huge deal.
So it's looking a lot more control-y.
Yeah. But then the most fun card from the stack is the Shadows Ambassador. So the Ambassador is a cool card that Sanctum got in Age of Ascension. He's elusive and he has a fight reap ability. Just 1 strength, nothing crazy. But the ability is you can play or use a Shadows card this turn.
That's very handy because we have Shadows in the faction.
That's right. So it's a special rarity. It only gets included when you have the other faction that it works with.
Right on.
So technically speaking, like this deck could have a Shadows Ambassador and a Dis Ambassador, and I've seen some with 2 or 3 ambassadors in a deck.
That's too cool.
But it's just fun.
I haven't seen this before, by the way.
Yeah, you've never seen the ambassador.
This is kind of my first look at Age of Ascension.
That was one of the first decks I played against. Someone had 2 ambassadors out, and I was like, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
It's just Sanctum's ability to kind of work with the other houses and negotiate.
That's the kind of thing that to me screams fun. Like, I don't know why, but the idea of a Sanctum ambassador being able to use Shadow stuff and like hanging out with their faction, to me, the theme of that is really fun.
Well, and also just the
I'm gonna give Shadows a look here. What do you think?
Sure. The thing about the ambassadors is inherently the game is structured and balanced around the idea that you're only going to activate 1 house a turn. So there are combinations of cards that you literally can't use unless you have a ambassador, which I think is just a very cool. It's like a very specific way of allowing those interactions to happen, and that's why it's so fun, because all of a sudden now you can, as an example, play a Shadows card on your Sanctum turn, and that leads to a whole bunch of possibilities that just couldn't happen before.
Nice. All right, so let's check this out. Finding a lot of interesting things in this Shadows pool. So obviously the old association of Shadows with Bait and Switch, which has been updated and errated here now in Age of Ascension, you kind of think of Shadows as like tricks that steal your amber and take things away. So again, it is a house that tends to slow the game down as much as it is also speeding it up for your side. But there's a lot of really good steal cards in this Shadows pool, which you would expect, right? A lot of things that are dealing damage and stealing amber accordingly. But we also see some slowdown cards in the form of
oh my goodness, this deck is a monster.
We've got too much to protect, right? So you steal all but 6 of your opponent's amber. So again, keeping the game a little bit slow, especially when they're forging keys at +2 amber costs. That's a problem. We've got a miasma where they skip their forge key step next turn.
I thought there was 2 there.
So that's slowing the game down as well. And then I just thought this card was hilarious. Speaking of spoils, Perplexing Sophistry is fine. It gains you an amber, and if you have more than your opponent, they discard a random card from their hand and you draw a card. So like that's a great just static Shadows effect, but it's also just great theme. So a deck that has 2 of these, I'm immediately like, this is a card that I think is really cool. I want to play this card. The theme is strong.
Yeah.
All right, so the next step there, so we kind of have started to outline, I feel like, the kind of initial hypothesis about what this deck might do.
Sure.
So it's probably going to play a little bit slower. It's going to kind of creep into gaining board advantage, gaining some advantages over time, and it's not got any that we can see immediately just kind of like blow out combos and plays and moments. So the next thing I like to do personally is I like to see how many creatures I have. Right, I feel like that kind of tells me if I'm going to be doing a lot of board work or if I'm going to be sitting back and playing events. So let's count these creatures up, shall we?
I've got 12 between these 2 houses.
13, 14, 15, 16 creatures total. So that's respectable.
That's right under half. One thing I've noticed about Age of Ascension compared to Call of the Archons, which was the first set, it seems like the average creature count is higher. It used to feel like you could have anywhere from 0 to 12 creatures in any one house. And now it very much feels like it's 4 to 8. Like there's less of a variance going on. I've seen very few decks that have one house that has more than 8, and I haven't opened any under like 3 or 4 kind of a thing.
So we would say this is probably an average amount of creatures. And I would say that looking around at the values, there's a lot of like 1s, 2s, 3s. So this is a low health, low power creatures. So you can assume that most of your creatures are going to be doing utility type things rather than just trying to like, kill your opponent.
And, clear the board or gain a ton of amber. So it definitely feels like, it's one of those decks, given the amount of, you have stealing going on, you have the ability to make their keys cost more, you have the ability to make it where they can't reap. So it's like if you slow them down, and then when they do get it, you can steal it, right, enough, you can really catapult ahead.
It feels a little like you're going to grind it out. Now, the last thing I like to do just for my own benefit is I like to just look at the golden nuggets in the top left of the cards. Not only does it satisfy the lizard brain part of my existence, ooh, look at these shiny things, but also it's going to tell you, do you have the ability to just kind of gain amber out of nowhere? This is kind of
playing cards.
it's almost like the heartbeat of your deck. Like the more cards you're playing that are just gaining you amber, that's going to help you accelerate, obviously, to forging keys.
Well, and I also think it's easy when you first start playing KeyForge to think, I just need to play all the cards in my hand.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think what you start realizing the more you play certain decks is there's combinations of cards that are way more powerful than just playing them.
Yeah.
And so there's some combos worth saving cards for. But in this case, if you look, we actually have 12 cards here that directly generate amber. And it looks like we even have some like this that can generate amber, even though they don't look like they do on the surface. And so when you look at 12, that's 1 in 3 cards, which means if you're just moving through your deck, you're going to end up with a decent amount of amber. Most games, I get to the end of my deck at least once.
Yeah.
So if you play all of those cards, you know that's at least 12 amber, right? So, and even just looking at the basic, like, kind of long-form math on, you need 18 to win, unless they play a card like Proclamation, which we've seen. And so you're going to have to find a way to get amber. That's not just playing your cards.
Right.
But you also need to play your cards to get to those cards that produce amber.
It's the game. It's the game we're playing. And I also like to look at in-house synergy. So a lot of times when you're looking at a deck, you can get trapped into this mindset of, look at how all these cards are working together, and then you play the game. And it's like, but I want to do this Sanctum thing, but it needs this Dis thing out for me to work this Sanctum thing. So now I've got to take a Dis turn and do this. And then they destroy that thing, and then my Sanctum card that was this awesome synergy is now worthless. So in-house synergies are really important as compared to multi-house synergies. One great example of this is I have 2 copies of this card, Throwing Stars, and also a Key of Darkness here. So the way Throwing Stars works is I can deal a damage to 3 different creatures and then gain 1 for each creature that was destroyed. And because I have 2 of those in the deck, if I have 2 of them in my hand, 2 strength creatures are going to yield me amber. And even in my own deck, I'm looking at, a 1 health here. I've got 2 healths over here. So even if I need to destroy some of mine to get
don't
that
be afraid to destroy your own
generation
creatures.
going,
Yeah.
so I could potentially, even with these 2, if the board is perfect, I can get 6 amber, and then I've got a Key of Darkness that can immediately forge a key. So this is a little micro synergy with like some sucker punches and stuff where I look at what can I do on a big Shadows turn, like what's my best play, and if they have small creatures or if I have small creatures in play, this is a combo I should be looking for. So if I draw like a 1 copy of Throwing Stars, I might be saying, well, I'm going to hold on to that, and I'm going to wait until I get that 2nd copy so I can really make use of that combo.
Or even just attacking into your opponent to get them where you have those creatures to be able to, because if that turns into a play this, kill 3 creatures, gain 3 amber.
That's a massive play.
That's an insane card.
It's a massive
play.
play.
The other thing about, just on the synergy note, I think we started hitting on the synergy of this deck very quickly, and a lot of times it's not that obvious. Like the whole stop them from forging keys, stop them from reaping. But I just looked at 3 more of the discards, which it's funny when you say it together, discards. A couple things. One, the Dust Imp is destroyed gain 2.
Yep. So what a good pair with Throwing Stars,
So
Zach.
100%. So you have
Boom, let's put it up there.
those 3 cards technically to me.
This is the deck.
The Dust Imp, Throwing Stars. All this gains amber for you, right? So then you look, and it's like if your opponent has 4 more, steal 1. There's another one that can get you an amber. And most of these cards are finding a way to give you amber. But the other 2, just adding to this I'm going to get amber and you're not theme. We also got the Bloodshard Imp. After a creature reaps, its controller must sacrifice it.
Whoa, I didn't realize that. That goes with the Amber Imp. I left that one behind.
Yeah, now you have another just super crazy thing. But so we had the Proclamation, which is +2 amber for keys if they don't have 3, right?
Yeah.
You have the ability to stun them, destroy them. What was the third one that if they reap, something happens?
Well, we also have the Miasmas, and we have the Too Much to Protects here. So we've got a lot. And there's that little guy over there.
Well, there's this guy. After your opponent gains amber by reaping, this is Sir Maros. Sir Maros captures it. So all that. But then on top of all of this is the cherry on top for me. You have Lash of Broken Dreams.
Oh, a classic.
Which is an artifact, and you can take an action and to make your opponent's keys cost 3 more.
It's so good.
So with Proclamation out and Lash in play, their keys might cost +5. You have multiple ways to make it where reaping is not an attractive option for them.
You can steal a lot with your Shadows pool. So
it's pretty wild. There's too much to protect steals it too.
Yeah.
So one of the things in the set that I've noticed is there are a lot more cards that. So there's bait and switch in the first set, right? Which is basically you steal amber until you have more than your opponent. Mm-hmm. So if they have 10, you have 0. It's a huge swing. Like you lose 5, I gain 5 kind of situation. But In this case, the cards typically penalize you for being over 8 or more.
Okay. Yeah.
Specifically, like there's a lot of like too much to protect is 6, but there's a lot of like if your opponent has 8 or more, purge a creature kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But when you can make their keys naturally just cost 2 more with Proclamation and maybe 3 more with that, and then you look at cards like too much to protect, that's not that great if your opponent just gets to 6 and stops.
Right.
Right?
Right. In fact, it's, some would say, quite useless.
Yeah, but the balance between not going over 8 and then also if you're only at 6 and especially when they have shadows, they can steal one pretty easy.
Yeah.
So you need to go to 7 or 8, but it's this kind of going back and forth. Like, do I bet that they don't have the steal one, or do I bet that they don't have the really good cards at 8?
It's tough.
But this deck forces them to go over 8, which is something I love, because your opponent's going to be terrified the whole time they're playing.
Yeah, that's great. And then even my favorite card is Perplexing Sophistry. If you have more amber than your opponent, it's like every card in here is basically creating a situation where you can control that you have more amber than your opponent. Then they discard a random card and you draw one. It's just like,
that's really powerful.
This little engine's working, Zach.
Yeah.
I think this is a great little deck.
And you know, the funny thing is when we first looked, and it can be so deceiving. That's why you just need to open decks and start playing them.
I'm excited to play this.
When I looked at the list, you look and it's only got a couple of rares, and there's nothing particular. The Shadows Ambassador is probably the most like shiny thing in the deck. But you know, I think unless you actually opened it up and looked at all the cards and busted it out, it would be very easy to not catch everything that the deck is doing.
Yeah, just essentially kind of spread the cards out and look at the amber symbols. If you have a lot of, like, I remember there was a deck in Call the Archons where I started looking and it was like, wait a minute, like I've got 18 elusive creatures in this deck. You know, like that kind of a vibe.
Yeah.
And you discover it and you're like, that is the coolest thing ever. Nobody can attack my stuff.
No one can touch me.
And then you get wrecked by board wipes. But like that's kind of the point, is you get to understand.
Open it down here so the
every
sound
deck
doesn't
has
go.
a little. Let's not sleep on how fun this is. That every deck has a unique personality, and it actually does. Like, it's not just a marketing gimmick. Like, every time I play a deck, I have to learn it in a more intimate way than I was expecting for cardboard.
I think,
you know,
the promise they made when the game was announced, they delivered on.
Yeah.
That's really what
I'm
it
with
boils
you on
down
that.
to.
I agree.
All right, so here's what I'm gonna do for
How'd
this.
you open that so fast? That was way better.
I just made it happen. You know, I'm not letting anything stop me.
What a good strategy.
So what
I
I
thought about that the first
What
time.
I want to do is I'm gonna stack these 3 up, and I'm gonna let you pick one of these.
Do you want to introduce a secondary method? So how do you, if you were right now, you just opened this deck, what is it that you would do?
First step, doesn't have Mars, so we can keep it. If it had Mars, I'm just throwing it over my shoulder. Then I read the name. It's J. Mary.
I'll be there, catch it. Free decks.
Here we go. J. Mary, Baron of the Hollow Singularity.
Okay, that's
which
pretty
is
cool.
a pretty cool name.
Good avatar, too.
Good
got
avatar,
some nice angel
got some
wings.
wings. It's purple. It's Sanctum, Dis, and logo.
I love logos every time.
So technically, the first thing I would do before I even look at the cards is I would look at the list. And the first thing there's a handful of things I'm looking for. Are there any Mavericks, any Legacy cards? They actually, this time, there aren't any in this deck. But there's a little icon next to the name of the card. And then next to the QR code, it'll actually have the icon and say Legacy, or have the icon and say Maverick when it's there.
So it gives you.
So if you just look down here, you can immediately see, do I have it or not? And then the things I'm looking at are, what are my rares and what are my multiple of cards, right?
That's something that should really be, like, understanding how many of multiple cards that you have in a particular faction really helps to understand what is this deck going to see a lot of, right?
Yep.
And that helps you understand what are you going to be doing most of the time during your games.
Yeah.
The multiple cards, that's where I get excited, where it's like, I've got 5 punches in here. It's like, this is a punching deck, right? I mean, it's
That's
like,
right, Mr. Punch.
a lot of times it can really define your strategy.
And I think, it's just the things you're going to consistently see. So otherwise, it's just a tool that does one thing sometimes, right? But if you had 4 miasmas as an example, it's like, well, there's a pretty clear, this is what this deck's going to make happen.
I've got some ideas about how that might play.
You're not going to forge. But I look at that, and for me, I've played enough, and now New Set was different. So last week when Age of Ascension came out, I had to literally just start opening decks so I could start learning what the commons do and all that kind of stuff. But I know about, obviously, a lot of the old cards I kind of am already familiar with. But the things the kind of flavor that I'm looking for, and the like spikes in flavor to me, are typically the rares.
Yeah.
So in this case, right, there's a handful of rares in here that I haven't seen even now. So I literally the other day pulled out all of my rares, which they actually stack them now where they're on the top.
Oh, they're on the top. Look at that.
Each of the stacks of the
I had
houses.
no idea.
And I look for, this is where do you have an epic quest, kind of a card, which kind of wants you, so epic quest, if you're unfamiliar, it's
Makes your
probably
heart
on the
flutter
screen.
a little bit.
Yeah, when you play it, you can archive any of your knights that are in play, and then basically if you play 7 or more Sanctum cards in one turn, you forge a key for free.
That's awesome.
So if a deck has a bunch of knights and epic quest, then the idea is that you can get them in play. The knights are usually a little tankier, harder to kill.
Right
You
on.
play this epic quest, you archive them, the next round you put them back in your hand, drop 7 Sanctum cards, and here we go. Anyways, so
Already the strategy is obvious and different.
just
Off those
you
three
can
rares.
just see these 3 cards.
I mean,
So
this is a
I'll-
board control.
100%. So the first one is Vemos Lightbringer. It's a rare from Sanctum. Play, destroy each elusive creature.
There goes my 18 creature deck. Huh?
The Opal Knight, which is play, destroy each creature with an even power. And then there's Harlan Mindlock, which is play, take control of an enemy flank creature until Harlan Mindlock leaves play.
3 creatures that just come out and wreck the board.
They
That's
are
impressive.
definitely manipulating the board. So then, obviously, if you see that, because the thing about the rares, they don't show up in most decks, right? That's why there's still cards from the
rare.
first set I haven't seen. They're actually rare. So if, let's say, I think the odds of any one house being in a deck are like right around 40%,
Okay.
because you have 3 houses per deck, and there's 7 houses, 3 out of 7, that math.
I've got the spreadsheet open.
I do not, actually, which is a
Equals.
surprise. So that's where, like, if you think about Sanctum, I don't know how many rares they have in this set, but I'm going to guess it's at least 25 or 30
I
or
don't even
20.
want to know. I just want to think it's infinite.
I don't.
I can always discover
I actually
something
haven't
new.
looked, right? But if 40% of your decks are Sanctum, and let's say each of them contains 1 unique rare, you would have to own 25 or 30 Sanctum decks to own all the rares. And I don't. Like, it's not even
Right.
close.
To even have a shot at it. You're saying,
Yeah, which is why, like, I still haven't seen some of the cards. Obviously, you play enough around, like, a local store or something, you'll see a lot of them. Or if you just look online, apparently. Those are there. But yeah, so I would look here, and it's like, well, the rares want me to destroy or take control of creatures.
Okay. So
then-
you should be pretty good out on the board, so hopefully we have some cards that reinforce that theme.
Yeah, so then I would just start literally looking through and reading, and it's immediately being reinforced. Check this out. So Spider with a lot of Ys, 2 cost or 2 strength creature. It has skirmish. It gains poison while it's attacking an enemy flank creature. If you damage a creature and you have poison, you kill them.
So that's
if it-
just a boom,
just dead.
dead.
So the only thing that stops that's armor,
boom, dead.
right? So then again, it's just going to keep going. Scullion, play, sacrifice a friendly creature. So you have to sacrifice one of yours.
So you get a big guy out, but you got
He's
to
a monster.
kill one of yours.
A literal,
7-2,
he's
yeah.
a demon.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of reading through here.
Well, let me hit you with this one. You ready for this?
Yeah.
We got the Radiant Truth there from Sanctum. Stun each creature not on a flank. Right? So we're seeing like that board control is happening hugely.
This is another. So then I'm looking for just very powerful cards, right? This one is Misery Exploit. Play, gain an amber for every damaged enemy creature.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. Cold the Weak. Destroy the least powerful enemy creature. We get another one of those amber amps that you were talking about earlier.
Got some stun cards in Sanctum that are stunning the board, and then have a lot of stuff that's gaining and capturing amber based on combat. So that's a really good sign there as well. That we're going to be on the board. We're going to be attacking things, and we want to establish our presence. Our creatures should slowly start to outnumber and overwhelm our opponent, and then we'll have opportunities to reap or otherwise cause havoc.
Yeah, and so on top of that, we have the logo stuff, which is just
Logos.
It's always the house that just goes around my brain.
That's why I love it. Yeah,
somehow.
you feel like you can't quite ever play it right.
Yeah, look at this guy, Jar Goggle. He's elusive. Play, put a card from your hand face down under Jar Goggle. When he's destroyed, if it's your turn, play the card under him. Otherwise, archive that card.
Oh, well, that'd be a really good little combo with our demon that kills one of the things that we own.
Yeah.
If we wanted to play the card underneath it.
Yeah, this is just
really
crazy.
good.
I'm trying to wrap my mind around what I would do with this deck. Because, like, I'm looking through, and they have a lot of cards that archive stuff, as you can imagine. But, like, check this guy out. Professor Sutterkin.
Professor Sutterkin. Ooh, look at this thing. Draw a card for each friendly logos creature. So a little card draw. Well, let's stick to the fundies, shall we? Let's start with seeing how many creatures we've got. So I'm gonna pull my Sanctum creatures out here. That'll give us some indication as to how this is gonna play. And then what about the logos? You got all the logos creatures out?
No, I did not.
Okay, there's ooh, I love seeing Wild Wormhole always. Ooh, my gosh, logos creatures everywhere.
24.
24 creatures. So as compared to the 16 in the last deck.
Yeah,
Wasn't it 16?
8 creatures more than your opponent.
So it's playing into what we thought. That's good. So it's going to start, establishing board presence and establishing our creatures out there in the field. Now, when I'm looking at the logos cards that are not creatures, I'm seeing draw, draw, play, draw. So this is going to help even out our draws. I like that a lot.
There's a ton of drawing.
The Sanctum is actually not that creature heavy, and it has a lot of things that are controlling amber and creatures.
That's probably pretty good, actually. Because
Right.
if you just had a bunch of extra creatures, I don't know that would be useful here.
So Free Markets is a really good card here when we're looking at how each house has a lot of creatures represented. So it's an action for Sanctum. It's you just play it out of your hand. Gain an amber, a maximum of 6 for each house represented among cards in play except for Sanctum. So we have a lot of disc creatures. We have a lot of logos creatures. That should pretty easily gain us 2, 3, 4 amber based on what our opponent has in play.
Yeah, and
I'm happy about that.
Free Markets is great. I think it's a great card. But you have a couple cards in the deck, like Misery Exploit that I mentioned earlier, gain 1 for every damaged enemy creature. So it does have cards that can gain 3 or 4 or 5 or more amber, which is very important. And I think with the card draw here and the archiving that's going on, you should be able to set those up in like an appropriate way. Now, one thing I will mention is the Vemos Lightbringer destroys each elusive creature, including your own, and the deck has 5 of those in here.
Ooh, so we got to be careful with that. So playing early or playing around that is really something we'll have to look for. And that's the kind of mistake that I'm going to make in the first game I play with this deck.
I killed all my creatures.
And then I'm going to say, oops, and then I will probably not do it again.
But that's where, as an example, there's 5 elusive creatures of your own that you could destroy. 2 of them you kind of want to destroy.
That's good.
Especially out of turn, because this is a Sanctum card. So Jargoggle, how would you say that?
Yeah, Jargoggle.
Google? Goggle? It's not Google.
Jargoggle?
Jargoggle.
Jargoggle. Goggle.
Anyways,
like Bogle.
when he's destroyed, if it's your turn, you can play the card under him.
Right.
So technically, that would let you play any card in your deck on either a turn where it's Logos, because he could just attack into something and be destroyed. But Vemos lets you do that on a Sanctum turn as well.
That's pretty cool.
So that could lead to some stuff. The other thing is Amber Amp, which is a discard that makes it where if a creature reaps, they get stunned. The ability to destroy that on your turn,
yeah,
without having to go with that house is actually pretty noteworthy.
Nice. So these are little things to look for, and I think that's as you start to lay these decks out and kind of understand all the different cards at play, you really just kind of start to match up little things like that you might see, right? Well, this creature says when it's destroyed, do a cool thing, and this one says when it's destroyed, do a cool thing, and then I've got 3 cards that destroy creatures, even including on my side of the board. I'm going to start to look for ways that I can really make that work for me. And I'm noticing right off the bat, just looking at this, we don't have a lot of cards that are gaining us amber when they're played. So already what I'm looking at here is like, this is playing essentially fundamentals. You're establishing a strong board presence. You're trying to win out on the, basically playing wide. You're going to play a lot of creatures out front. You've got Logos that's going to keep your cards in hand. It's going to be drawing you stuff. We always say that about Logos. It's actually very hard to actually get that to work in a way that is pleasing.
I think this is built to do it, though. If you look,
it has enough creatures to actually draw and play, draw and play, draw and play kind of things.
When I started looking at these, actually, it's like this lets you look at the top 3 of Igor. Look at the top 3 cards of your deck, add 1 to your hand, discard the others. This lets you play a non-Logos card.
Ooh,
if you play something next to this one, you get to draw a card, like on either side. When this reaps, you can draw a friendly card for every Logos creature.
This is actually really good.
This is very good. And 2 Library of Babel with a Wild Wormhole. Also, I meant to mention 2 of the Sanctum creatures are right here. So it's got 6 creatures, which is pretty.
So you're telling me that Logos, almost everything here is drawing cards, allowing you to play other houses.
100%.
That's amazing.
Which is incredible, especially, I'm starting to notice some things here about how I play it. We mentioned the free markets and the misery exploit, right? Mm-hmm. Which are these kind of weird ways to gain a whole bunch of amber. But also, looking at just this card over here, which is not finished with you, you play it, shuffle any number of creatures from your discard pile into your deck. So at first, it's like, okay, this deck has a lot of creatures, and that could be good to put these back in your deck. But I'm looking at this, and you almost have a combo deck going on. which is you have all of these creatures that let you draw a bunch.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can get, if I played this card and the only creatures you put back in your deck are these,
Yeah.
then the bottom of your deck becomes 10 Logos cards.
And they're all drawn through.
That all draw you cards.
Huh.
And then all of a sudden, you have to shuffle your deck again, and they're letting you just cruise back through it.
Yeah, because you're like draw, play, draw off that play, play, draw off that play, play.
Super wild, honestly. So there's weird stuff, and it's also got some capture, right? It's got the charrettes, and it's got the Abed the Grim, and it's got the Borden here, and like you look, and you keep going down the list, and it's like, it's got some ways to slow your opponent down, it's got some ways to destroy creatures, but again, with half the deck being, more than half the deck, is it 24 creatures?
Yeah, it had 24 in it,
That's
didn't
nuts,
it?
especially
Yeah,
with
that's
not
a
finished
lot.
with you. Like,
That's
it's
a
just
lot
pretty,
of creatures.
So like this ability to, you're gonna have to play fundamentals. You're gonna have to get creatures out. But I think the Logos pool makes it where you could literally overwhelm your.
We might flood the board with this deck.
Yeah.
I mean, I think so. I'm going to come into the first game of this deck, and I'm going to say, can I draw as many cards as possible and get as many creatures out as I can? And then I might get wrecked, right? I might lose,
Sure.
and I might get board wiped. But I want to prove the concept that, like, is this Logos thing doing what I think it is? And so I want to sit down, I want to play it, I want to see if I can accomplish that thing, and then it's like, okay, now that I know that it's capable of pushing out a ton of creatures, what are the right creatures to push out, and what are the combos that those creatures have available to them?
Yeah, because I'm looking. Did you already note how many Amber cards are in this deck?
Not very many.
I think it's 6.
4 and then 5, 6. Yeah.
7.
7. So it's slow.
It's got what, almost half as many as the previous deck that we did.
So just
So it
looking at
has
the
to get
difference.
creatures out.
I mean, yeah, you need to get creatures out and reap with this deck, whereas the other one, you can play a little control and then get your Amber through your cards and through your abilities that are stealing. So it makes perfect sense. Those are totally same box, 2 decks.
Yeah.
And I know that this is no grand revelation to people who've been playing KeyForge for a long time, or any amount of time really. But
I mean,
you gotta really understand how cool that is.
the nuts thing about it too, I'm looking. These 2 decks share 2 houses.
Mm-hmm. And they play entirely different.
And they're just playing radically different.
I
like,
love
that's,
it.
That's really awesome.
I love it. I love it, Zach.
Paul love it?
This is the game that I've been. This is the game my adult life has been waiting for. Really.
It's good. I
really
played a lot
is.
this weekend and had a really good time.
Let's do one more. What do you think?
All right,
I think
let's
we
do
got
it.
time for one
Let's
more.
do a bonus deck.
Let's do it one more, yeah.
Let's see.
I thought we might be doing 4, and I think we're only doing 3.
Just based on how it's going.
Now, of those 2, which one would you want to play more? I'd want to play that second one.
I'd
Because
probably want to play the first one.
It's just wild. I mean, it's like.
I mean, I'm more curious to see how the first one goes.
Yeah.
Or not the first one, the second one.
The second one, yeah.
But I feel like I would end up enjoying the first one more.
Because I like the idea of like having that door open where you don't quite know what's going to happen when you walk through it. And it's like, ooh, there's a lot to explore here. I wonder how this is going to work. When I'm filled with, I wonder how this is going to work, and I'm excited to play it, that usually is a trigger to me that
This is your deck.
this is a deck that I want to sit down and have a good time
But I mean,
with.
that's one of the funnest parts about this game is usually when I play a card game, I'm always asking,
How can I optimize?
What's the best?
Right.
What am I looking for? But in this case, it's like I don't even care.
Right.
I just want to see how this deck functions, which is super fun. Okay.
And I tell you what, if you, there's, you're a KeyForge player out there, you need to, and if that sounds good to you, like if that's the vibe that you're into, like the one that we're talking about here, where you just want to discover how these different decks play, there's a lot of people that probably feel the same way as you, and you just got to crack that conversation open. Because if everybody's getting funneled into this, like bring your best deck and play it over and over again, like start a conversation, be like, does anyone just want to rip open some decks and see how they play and have a good time enjoying and exploring that?
We've been experiencing that in at least our local Destiny community, where like all of a sudden it was like, why are we all playing to this?
Why don't we play things that are interesting and fun and we can
yeah.
enjoy? And like think about, so Jonathan back here behind the camera. So he and his wife play KeyForge about as casually as you could probably play it.
Just hanging out playing KeyForge?
Maybe once a month you sit down and get to play. So this box of 12 decks will last for 6 months of enjoyment, of not even fully being able to say, I understand how these decks work. And then by that time, it's time for a new set. So that, and Jonathan might never play with anyone but Leah in this case. So it's like, that's also a way to play this game, right? Like that's a way a lot of people are playing this game.
Well, and one thing I've kind of felt myself, because I have a history of playing card games, and
It's so funny you're getting all these decks that you wish you had gotten in your
I
boxes.
can't tell you.
just saw the
Yeah.
house combinations.
It's like, oh, thanks.
Sorry, what were you saying?
Yeah, it is funny. Yeah, I got a lot of Mars decks in my 2 displays. Thanks for being a subscriber, Zach. So I don't even remember what I know. So I'm playing KeyForge. I occasionally play in the store, but I'm playing seldom enough that it still feels like discovery every time I play, which is that's where I want to stay, and that's just me. Like I don't need to master it. I don't need to be the the world champion or anything, but like it is fun to at any point be able to walk in, buy a $10 deck, and have that experience.
Discover it.
So
That's
I will
the name.
say
They really did deliver on that promise. I think if you're willing to go with them on that, and
that's what I'm saying.
Shake the old ways away.
They delivered. I hope they stick to their guns.
Yeah.
That is continually what it's about, and that success doesn't mean that it turns into another tournament,
Big tournament
optimized
circuit,
thing.
et cetera,
Okay, so I'm going to tell you the
We
name
need
of this
another
deck.
one of those, don't we?
I looked at the list really quick while we were talking.
It's got Untamed, which I know you're happy about.
This deck, I love Untamed. This deck is.
See, you just Marie Kondoed that thing.
So
look at you. You can't stop smiling.
No, actually, you know what? This is the kind of deck.
Joy so
I will
hard.
say this. I'm going to read his name really quick. The Badly Toothed Barrister of Frost Hill.
Okay.
Now, the thing about this deck is that it actually should
Tell me what went through your head. What are you doing? How are you evaluating this
It should be thrown away because it's a ridiculous deck. I'm just kidding. But actually, there's
You got any symbols?
Symbols?
Yeah, let's start with our...
No, all right, so if
How's
I'm
the
going through my
Archon?
system, that's literally the first thing I did. I looked at the name, and then I looked at the...
Okay, no symbols.
No symbols?
All right.
This is also
Garbage.
the design. It's gold, and it's got these like wings hanging up. The, like,
Ooh, and it's
Archon
holding
design.
up a funeral pyre kind
It
of
looks like
offering.
a flame inside the like...
That's amazing.
And it's lightning going on behind it. I mean, it's just a dream come true for Jonathan. So
You're going to be looking to trade here a little bit later.
so he won't after I'm about to go on the tirade I'm about to go on. He'll just be selling it or something. So Lupo the Scarred.
You pulling your rares out? What's going on here?
Well, I literally started fanning through the cards.
Okay.
I skipped the list this time. I love Lupo the Scarred. He's like a saber-toothed tiger-looking creature.
Looks like a Lion King scar.
This is in the
thing.
same like ancient bear vibe of this like old, scary, ferocious creature, almost like a. Anyways,
What happened that's the thing that you're into?
I have no idea. I feel like it's.
You could ask the same thing about bat drones for me though. So
Yeah,
throw
I feel
any
like that's a
shade in that
mechanic
direction.
thing more than anything to you. But I don't know. Like I think about things going through my mind right now are like I just watched Godzilla, so you have these like big ferocious creatures. I also been doing the Power Ranger stuff recently, so you see the
you got
Zords,
the
the
Zords
creatures
and the
and
dinosaurs.
stuff. Yeah.
Man, I love
I
dinosaurs.
don't know. Creatures are cool. Like it's just. Anyways, I also wasn't allowed to have pets, so maybe that.
Oh man, a
played
lot of
into it, yeah.
your gaming habits come from things you couldn't do as a kid.
Well, if you can't have pets, then you may as well have dinosaurs that you can. Anyways,
very true.
Lupo's cool. He's just a 6-strength creature with skirmish, and he deals 2 and something. But
That's great. Little board control.
This is a card that people have been talking about online. This is exactly what I'm talking about. So there's 2 ways to play this game, right? You can have fun, or you can go to tournaments. Just kidding. You can go to tournaments and have fun. I did that this weekend. But,
Sealed, for instance, is great.
Sealed.
Right? Sealed.
So Heart of the Forest. This is a card people have been talking about. You get an amber when you play, and it's an artifact, so it stays in play. Each player cannot forge keys while they have more forged keys than their opponent.
That's the kind of card that defines a deck.
So that sounds fun. It's like, oh, you get ahead, and you can't forge until I'm like on the same key level.
Yeah,
So technically, if we were just going back and forth, then like let's say you get to 2 keys and I'm at 1, you might have 20 amber.
I just got to stop playing cards until you catch up.
But you can keep playing cards and keep getting amber, right? But the problem with this card comes in when if you have any way to forge a key on your turn,
Right.
because literally I could be at 1, you're at 2, I can just sit here. If you can't get rid of this artifact,
You're not in a rush.
I can literally wait till I have enough amber. I can forge a key at the start of my turn, then forge a key, right? So we'll get to it in a second.
Whoa.
It has
you
those
have
cards.
that? You've got that ability? In there?
2 of those cards, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So it's
Show
got
me.
the Chota Hazri. When you play it, you lose 1. If you do, you can forge a key at the current cost.
That's amazing. But what if this is out? Then you can't do that,
Well,
no matter what.
Yes, but at the start of your turn, if you forge a key and then you have 7 left over, or the ability to get to 7,
Right.
you just win the game and they can't do anything
Oh,
about it.
no way.
Yeah. Which, we'll get to better things. You also have Key Charge, which is lose 1. If you
Oh
do, you
my
can forge a key
gosh.
at the current cost.
I've not seen anything this cool out
Now,
of Untamed in a while.
This deck also has the answer to itself.
Because I was saying, like, this doesn't matter if you have more keys than your opponent forged, you still can't forge that final key, right? If they're on 1, you're on 2, you can't do it.
But if I'm on 1 and you're on 2,
Right.
the start of my turn, I forge my second key. during my turn, I forge my third key.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
You can't stop
so
that.
it's like a choo-choo train coming up.
As long as, because obviously at the start of my turn, if I have more, I'm going to forge. So it's not like you can just wait. You have to be able to go from 5 to basically 12.
I see what you're saying.
Turn. But if you just wait and set up your little combo.
So you sit on this until you can do something massive, and then it happens all at once.
Yeah.
Boom,
you can also, theoretically, sit on this, stall the game out completely.
Yeah, forever.
You can't forge a key, which is awful. Anyways, it's got 2 Grasping Vines, which lets you get an amber and put 3 artifacts in their opponent's hand. So it could beat another deck of the same thing, right? But if I just start looking, by the way, at
that's incredible.
The number of Untamed cards here that provide amber.
Oh my gosh.
It's high.
So essentially what has happened here is you have thrown the formula completely out the window. So everything that we've been talking about is not being done here. And you've given into that giddy, childlike sense of just
that's why I was
loving
smiling.
The Untamed pool.
It's just like, what is happening? Why is this existing? So then, now that I've seen this, I'm going to start looking for, once I saw Heart of the Forest as the second card, because I saw Lupo and I was like, what else is in here? Instead of getting more awesome creatures, I got the Insanity. Because look at how many creatures are here.
Would you say this is the time in deck evaluation where your heart begins to pound a little bit and you're like, please let the other houses be everything that I want them to be? Or does your heart not pound like mine?
I mean, the problem is that if it's so obviously good, it's not fun.
Okay.
And that's why, like, I was smiling. It's like this deck literally needs to just get chunked because, like...
Well, this isn't so obviously good. I mean, you're going to have to do some fancy maneuvering to get your Heart of the Forest out, and then...
Yeah, and the thing this deck's going to struggle with, if you look, it only has 3 creatures in Untamed.
Yeah, so that's the beginning of the struggle.
Yeah, so you essentially... And I'm looking here to see if there's a way. So you're going to have to be able to gain Amber somehow else.
Yeah,
quickly to make this really.
Because you don't have a lot of reaping potential in Untamed. You have a couple of cards you can play for Amber, but that's not going to do it. That's not enough.
I guess I'm just processing it. This is a crazy deck to end on. It's great. So like technically, if you go with another house and I get to 12 Amber, you go.
Yeah.
I still haven't forged a key.
That's true.
So then I'm going to roll into Untamed on my next turn.
You really just need to roll into Untamed with the Amber, not
so
necessarily
if
generate
either of these houses can, and one of them shadows.
Can they? Let's go.
Let's find out.
You want me to start?
Yeah, go ahead. I've been
all right,
talking
ready
too
and fight
much.
with a friendly creature. That's not going to do it. Little Amber. These are all generating Amber from Sanctum, but it's not anything fancy. Sacrifice some stuff. Ooh. Weird. Okay, there's some Amber. There's some Amber. Zach, you're going to have a huge problem here. You're not going to have any creatures. I'm going to tell you right now.
It doesn't need it. Just play Heart of the Forest.
I'm telling you, man. I mean, there's just a lot of things that aren't really
driving.
So you have 4 Sanctum creatures.
So that's 6 creatures.
So
by the way, yeah, let's count it out. We have 5 here for Shadows.
Okay.
But check these out.
Shadows is bringing it. Maybe that's the key here.
So you have the Yancey gang, which I love. Just the theme, look at these cats, and it's the Yancey game.
And you got 2 of them in there, yeah.
Action, steal 1.
Okay, that's good.
This
is what we wanted. So Shadows is going to do the work, and then we're going to go into Untamed and end the game.
Steal 1, and that's just a creature.
All right, so then over on the Sanctum side, we have 2 Abond the Armor Smith, which is cool. So friendly creatures get +1 armor, and then he has an action for the remainder of the turn. Other friendly creatures get +1 armor. So that's pretty good if you're doing some fighting. We've got a taunt here on old Chala the Safeguard. Also going to have a lot of armor, so a good creature there, and then a capture 2 from Borden. So that's fine. That's not necessarily great, but it's fine. Hallowed Shield, creature can't be damaged for a turn. We're going to fully heal creatures and gain Amber. And then ultimately, the good thing is we do have some big gold nuggets on this one. So we've got 5 that are just making Amber out of nothing for Sanctum.
Yeah, so this is crazy. This is a wild deck.
This is the kind of deck that you just got to get it on the table.
Yeah, because
you got to start playing it.
This deck is either going to be great, and this will be. We should play this at some point. Because I'm also looking here at the rest of the Shadow cards, right? And this is Furtive Investors. It gains you an Amber. If your opponent has more Amber than you, you gain 1 Amber for every key they have.
Now that is good.
So that's a 3 Amber card, assuming they're at 2. Special Delivery gains an Amber. You can sacrifice it, do 3 to a flank creature. If it destroys it, purge it. Long Fuse Mine is another artifact. Sacrifice it, deal 3 to an enemy creature not on a flank, which is the opposite. Another amber.
And those are all gaining you amber when you play them.
Yeah. If you have more amber than your opponent, you make them discard a card. But that's essentially it. So
this deck's going to have problems with things that have a lot of creatures out.
Or a lot of creature control, because you only have so many creatures.
Yeah, and this one doesn't have a lot of like wipe the board. It's doing like little bits of damage over time, and you don't really have a lot of creatures that can go out there and control your opponent's stuff. So it's a fascinating little deck. So let me get this straight. So we've got the first deck, which is like very much a tempo game where you're gaining a lot of amber, you're keeping your opponent off of amber, keeping them from forging keys, and kind of rushing to the finish. That's what it felt like to me.
Yep.
Second deck, you were playing a slower game. You're keeping things under control. You're building a bigger board of creatures with the potential to explode out a lot of creatures all at once. Then probably taking some turns to reap and trying to finish the game that way.
And I feel like that would be a good matchup because you have the one deck that wants to stop you from reaping and the one deck that's loaded full of creatures.
That'd be a good test case, too, to play this together. And then finally, you have what is essentially the wild card of could drop some crazy moments in a game, could also do nothing.
Absolutely nothing, yeah.
Which I think this is the most interesting deck to actually get on the table and find out what does it bring when you start to actually see the cards link up together.
Yeah, and it has a lot of ways. So it's kind of like save the pack, destroy each undamaged creature. A lot of ways to deal 1 damage to everything, or 2 to everything, or 2 and 1 to another. So it has a good amount of creature control, and maybe
unless they're big.
The real thing to me is I wish the deck had like 4 or 5 more shadows elusive. Like if all these were elusive, that way you can at least get them out and like have creatures going on. Yeah. But it really, I think it literally revolves around Heart of the Forest and the ability to be at 1 key, let your opponent go wild on amber.
Yeah.
And the other thing is if it had a way of penalizing your opponent for having a ton of amber, that is when this would really start to make it happen.
If this Shadows pool was switched with the one from the first deck, that would be insane.
Yeah, too much to protect and all that kind of stuff.
All right, so just briefly, here's some important things to note just from literally the hour or so that we've been recording this video.
By the way, 17 amber cards, I just counted.
One is find the fun in this. This game is really about discovery. It's about having a good time. You don't have to determine is this the best deck in the world or not. You don't have to go hunt down the best deck in the world. You don't even have to play against people who have good decks. It's all about just discovering the decks that you have and then finding other decks that are out there in the world and saying, I think I like the way that one plays. Do you want to swap it with this one? Is this the one that is maybe the way you want to play? I think that's really the focus of this game, and of the evaluation techniques that you're using really need to be about what cards do you love, what houses do you just get excited? You saw it with Untamed. It's like, what gets you excited to play, and you have full agency to play that, and not be hampered by all of the different rating systems and whatnot, and be like, oh, this is good or this is bad. Just play the decks that you want to play, and sometimes you'd be really surprised at how well you can do and the things you can discover when you start playing on your 5th, 6th, 7th game. It's like, oh man, I'm really getting the feel for this. And that's really the fun of this game, at least for me, is in that. So evaluating decks in that context, and then just a couple of ways that Zach and I tend to look at this. I mean, start with your name and your Archon. If you love it, keep it. I mean, that's a key indicator. Look at the houses and kind of get a feel for the houses that you like, and that'll give you an indication of the decks that you might be looking for. And then really just start to identify some of the more notable cards in your deck. A lot of times that's the rares. Sometimes it's 3 or 4 of a certain card that starts to tell you a direction. And then laying it all out and looking at the creatures you've got, the amber generation you've got, and then almost like how many of the same words are on the same cards, right?
Sure.
Is there a lot of steel cards? There are a lot of elusive cards. And then look for little things that might really change the game. Heart of the Forest being a great example. This deck actually has that card. It has ways to utilize that card, and it has ways to bounce that card. So it starts to look like a Heart of the Forest deck, if I were ever going to say one. And ultimately, once you know what you like, you can trade, you can buy extra decks, you can go to sealed tournaments, you can find a friend who wants to discover decks like you want to discover them, and you can have a good experience that way. There are ways online to buy decks directly. We have one of those. It's called Choose Your Deck. It's the Choose Your Deck gallery. We update it every Friday with new decks, and then we also mark down any decks that haven't sold the past week by at least 20%. So it's a really cool way. Every week you can go in and say, oh, I'm going to browse these new decks. I'm going to do the same thing that we've done here. I'm going to look at all the cards. I'm going to see if it's the play style that I like. And then maybe you can just buy that deck directly. And that's a good way to have fun with the game because you know you're going to have something that you enjoy playing.
And I literally, so as we mentioned at the top, I got my 2 boxes for the Age of Ascension. Open it up.
14 from the subscription.
From the subscription,
yeah.
14 of the 24 were Mars.
Yeah.
So I was immediately just like, what happened? Like I just got rocked. But then we uploaded the decks, first wave of Age of Ascension decks on the gallery. You can filter with the tags down to just the houses you want.
Yeah.
So I filtered down to the specific house combo I wanted, and there were like 4 decks. And so I clicked through, looked through. One had a cool name with a couple cards I really liked, and then all of a sudden it was just like, I'm gonna buy that one because I at least want to have one deck that I'm very excited about for this game. Then I ended up figuring out, even out of the decks I got, there's a couple I'm pretty excited about.
Very cool.
So,
and the final thing here, just play a lot. Play a lot. Even if you get beat with this deck, try a different strategy. As you get better at this game and getting better to a certain level is going to allow you to have more fun. When you have a certain level of mastery that you kind of see the hidden things going on during a game of KeyForge, it's not about just playing all the cards that you can from a certain house every turn. If you understand the potential of what you might draw next turn and turns after, if you understand if the board's set up a certain way and I draw this card, it's going to be really meaningful, those become really important considerations as you play your game. And you'll notice that as you learn more about any one deck that you continue to play and you understand what it can do, you will get better with that deck because you start to make decisions based on what it might do in the future, not what is in my hand right now. So just don't give up on a deck either. I mean, play it a bunch of times, have a good time with it. Even if you don't like it initially, give it a shot.
I think that's why the way we were evaluating decks here is so critical, because the ability to kind of step back and understand the macro level of the deck, right? Where it's like the heavy creature deck, as an example, it wants you to play a certain way. So if you play it like you've been playing maybe a Call of the Archon deck that's way less creature heavy, it's not going to go as well.
Right.
Because that's just not how that's going to work. And I feel like they did a really great job in Age of Ascension, and I hope this continues on in future sets, which is there's a lot heavier creature count, but it also feels like there's a lot less swingy cards. And so you're going to have to just kind of fundamentally outplay your opponent, right? And I think the people that understand what their deck's trying to do, even this very odd deck that I think is potentially very powerful, has a certain way it wants to set up and get around your opponent. And if you don't understand that, it's not quite the same. And honestly, half the fun for me is opening these decks, laying them out, and trying to decide what the strategy.
Yeah.
Because typically in
and
a
then
card
test
game,
it. You got to test in the lab. You got to go play
typically
it.
in a card game, you create the deck to do your strategy, and you test it so that you can basically optimize it to do whatever it is you wanted it to do. And in this case, there is that discovery element.
It's the opposite, right?
What is this trying to do? Yeah.
You're asking a question rather than starting with the answer.
Providing
it's
an
really
answer,
cool. So thank you guys so very much for watching us. Have a good time checking out these new decks and giving a little insight into how at least we evaluate them. If you would like to get future KeyForge releases delivered right to your door, it happens almost 100% of US customers are getting them on release day. The rest are getting them the day after. You're not charged until 2 weeks before they ship, and it's essentially like an automatic pre-order, but it's better almost in every way than doing anything else in terms of buying online. So if that's your game, if you're buying online currently, take a look at our KeyForge subscriptions. It's an incredible deal, and it's a really good thing for KeyForge players. And then secondarily, if you're just looking for some decks, you want to buy a deck that you think you might be interested in, our Choose Your Deck gallery is updated every Friday. You can find that on our website, and it's a great place to go, even if you just want to look at new decks every week and say, I wonder how I'd play that or how I'd play that. We appreciate you, and until next time, keep playing.
There's nothing like game night with friends, especially when there's a new release. Covenant subscriptions is the easiest way to get new releases without paying months in advance. Pick your favorite game, sign up for free, and we'll charge you right before our new product releases. We pack it with care, ship it to you, so you'll have exactly what you need to keep playing. And you can spend less time shopping and more time connecting.